Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Committee of the Whole meeting. This is our first meeting for 2024, so I would like to extend Happy New Year and best wishes to everyone. Mayor Haxon is currently on leave of absence, and I am assuming the role of the acting mayor. And for thank you, Councillor. Is there any other announcements, community announcements from the members? Yep. Yes. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, if there's no other announcements from members of council, I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce a new member of our senior management team that's here today, Mr. Larry Brassard. And Larry is taking over as the interim fire chief for our recently retired chief, Rob McKenzie. So I don't know if it's something you'd like to do, but with your permission, I would certainly love to have Larry just introduce himself and maybe tell council and the public a little bit about himself, just so you get to know him a little bit.
The committee would love to hear under the announcements, an exciting announcement with our new fire chief, so thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. CAO. I'm delighted to be here today, and you know, I don't say that lightly. In fact, I feel blessed, and I think the most appropriate word is it's an honor for me to be here, and I mean that sincerely. In the last couple of weeks, you can imagine that I've been trying to build some relationships with our staff, our career staff, and our paid-on-call staff, as well as members of the senior management team and other people who I'll be working closely with over the next few months. And it's been a joy. I can tell you that my first trip into East Gwillimbury left me excited about what's happening in this town. And you can't help but be excited when you see what's going on around us here. And it was a bit of a flashback for me. And so let me tell you a little bit about myself. I won't bore you to tears, but I'll start by saying 4.5 decades ago, I stepped on the tailboard of my first fire truck. And what an exciting ride it's been. So I started as a paid-on-call volunteer firefighter in a little town called Georgetown in North Halton region. And it had just gone through the amalgamation process that everyone went through 50 years ago. Halton went through the same thing as York, as Durham and Peel, and so on and so forth. But I found myself very lucky a year later to be hired as their first full-time fire prevention officer. And so I learned at a very young age of my career, how important the fire prevention component is. And I believe that to this day. I believe that an educated public is the absolute best way to protect our community, period. All aspects of the service are important, but that one is particularly near and dear to my heart. So I'll just fast forward quickly. I changed career paths about 5 years into that, where I stayed on as a volunteer firefighter in Georgetown, and I stayed in that capacity for more than 30 years. It was an important part of my life, obviously, but I changed careers and I jumped into policing. And I spent a great 20 years with Halton Regional Police, and I loved that experience and a wide variety of exposure to different issues in our community there, and it was wonderful. But at the 20-year mark, I got tapped on the shoulder and asked to go back into fire services on a full-time basis as a deputy fire chief in Halton Hills, and that was a great opportunity. And so I seized that, and opportunities kept coming my way. I found myself as the fire chief in Milton, at that time, Canada's fastest growing community. Now that's almost 20 years ago now, but an interesting parallel to what's going on here. From Milton, my career path took me down the road to Waterloo, where I served in the Waterloo Fire Rescue, and my first retirement came there. I say my first because I've been fortunate to have the benefit of retirement, and then I moved to Muskoka into the fire chief's role there on a contractual basis. That lasted for about 8 years. Jumped into the fire marshal's office for a brief foray and then tried to retire in earnest. And I'm still trying to retire in earnest because Huntsville was looking for an interim fire chief back at the beginning of 2021, and yours truly got nodded in that role. And so I helped them find a new fire chief there too. And so when this opportunity came along, when presented to me, it seemed very familiar. And so hence I'm in front of you today. A proud fire service career. I've enjoyed every moment of it. My policing career was equally enjoyable. And so that's a little bit about me. My family and I are in the south end of Gravenhurst. My wife, Heather, she's a stay-at-home mom. Thinking about that right now because our daughter Chantel's in her first year of university at the University of Windsor. We're not getting her home every weekend, but that's a joy as well. So that's a little bit about me. Spend my spare time outdoors when I can. As you can imagine, Muskoka is a great place to do that. So I'll wrap it up there and just leave it there.
Wonderful. Well, I can't think of a better spot to talk about community announcements than announcing the new interim fire chief. So thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you. Happy to have you here. Okay, so if seeing no other announcements, that will take us on to the presentations. And our first presentation is from our friends at the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and they're doing a presentation to us regarding assessments in Ontario. So welcome. Please step up to the podium. You will have 15 minutes for your presentation, and take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of Council. My name is Michelle DeSouza, and I'm an account manager at the Municipal and Stakeholder Relations Department at MPAC. Here with me today is my regional manager, Natasha Dawood, who is responsible for serving the property assessment needs of York Region, Durham Region, and Trenton. Next slide, please. So let's get started with a bit about MPAC. Our job is to assess and classify more than 5.6 million properties across Ontario worth a combined value of more than $3.1 trillion. In East Gwillimbury, we assess and classify close to 14,500 properties worth a combined value of more than $10 billion. Ontario added more than $42 billion in new assessment last year, and in East Gwillimbury, we successfully added over $400.5 million in new assessment. Every municipality uses our property assessments to make informed decisions about their community, including the distribution of property taxes. Next slide, please. There are 4 key players in Ontario's property assessment and taxation system, and all have a different role and interest in the process. The Ontario government, specifically the Ministry of Finance, is responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation as well as policies. Provincial legislation determines when MPAC conducts each province-wide assessment update and sets the valuation date for each update cycle. They also determine the education of property taxes. The Assessment Review Board also falls under the jurisdiction of the province and is an independent body which adjudicates appeals of MPAC's assessed values. MPAC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation funded by all Ontario municipalities. Our role, as I said, is to assess and classify all properties in Ontario. We do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and various regulations set by the Government of Ontario. We are accountable to the province, municipalities, and property taxpayers through a board of directors that is comprised of provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives appointed by the Minister of Finance. Municipalities determine their budget requirements, set tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for municipal services. Municipalities use MPAC's assessments and the established tax rate to distribute their tax requirements to property owners. Property owners pay the tax bill and help to set the market value through ongoing sales and purchases of property. Next slide, please. So the reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 was postponed by the provincial government to provide stability and certainty to Ontarians and to enable municipalities to focus on responding to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, property assessments continue to be based on a legislated valuation date of January 1st, 2016. Therefore, property values for the 2024 taxation year will continue to be based on this date, and that includes any new structures that have been built and are ready to be assessed. Next slide, please. Maintaining Ontario's property tax database is very important. Property data is continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate. Although the assessment update has been paused, maintaining our database is still a priority. And this includes inspecting and assessing new construction, renovations, and additions, responding to property owner inquiries, and working to help them to understand their assessments, and supporting municipalities. And that might be through offering Municipal Connect, which is our outward-facing information source on property-related information for municipalities, as well as working collaboratively on different projects, such as digital building plans. We also have important statutory duties that we do attend to, such as handling requests for reconsiderations and tracking school support for over 5.6 million properties. Next slide, please. So Ontario's property tax system is based on everyone paying their portion of what it costs to deliver community services. To do this, all properties are assigned a value at a common valuation date, as noted in the prior slide. This is a principle called current valuation assessment, or CVA. So this is the price that a property might reasonably be expected to sell for if sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after appropriate time and exposure on an open market. Next slide, please. So now let's talk briefly about assessment, about valuation. In Ontario, there are 3 industry-wide standardized approaches to valuing property. The first of these approaches is the direct comparison approach. This is used primarily for residential properties, condominiums, and vacant land. So we analyze sales of comparable properties that were sold for a similar or identical use as the property to be valued to provide an indication of value. It is also important to note that only valid and open market sales are used in this analysis. Next slide, please. So although our analysis tool considers over 200 factors, these 5 factors make up approximately 85% of a typical home's value. Those being location, lot size, the quality of construction of a home, the exterior square footage, and the age of the property, which does get adjusted for renovations and additions that may have occurred on the property. Next slide, please. So condominiums, those are valued, as I said, using the direct comparison approach. And condos with services that are paid by the resident, which might be part of the maintenance fees of the condominium charged by the condominium corporation, would be reflected in the sale price. If a new condo owner decides to pay to be located at a specific condo development, even though they must pay for some of the services, we value based on what that willing buyer will pay that willing seller. So irrespective of the services provided, MPAC will value based on the market value as of the legislated valuation date of January 1st, 2016. Next slide, please. So another approach to valuing property is the income approach. This is used for industrial malls, office buildings, shopping centers, and a variety of others. With income-producing properties, the ability to earn revenue is tied directly to its current value. To value these properties, we need to determine how much revenue it could generate, as well as the sale price. To clarify, it's not the revenue being generated by the occupant, but rather the rent that the occupant is paying to the landlord that we use to value properties using this approach. This method requires a detailed analysis of the income and expenses for the property being valued and other similar properties to determine how much income a property could generate if it sold on an open market. These two factors create what's called a capitalization rate, and that helps us to determine the property's assessed value. So this method estimates the annual fair market rental income and other potential income sources that the building can generate. It deducts operating expenses and applies that capitalization rate to the net income to arrive at an estimate of current value for the property. Next slide, please. So the third approach to valuing property is the cost approach. So this is typically used for general purpose industrial properties, small retail, and warehousing, just to name a few. This approach is used when a property type is unique and rarely sold on the open market, as we cannot rely on either the direct comparison approach or the income approach, just due to the lack of data. The cost approach is a three-step process. First, we calculate the cost of replacing the buildings, structures, or other accessible fixtures on the land. Then we apply a deduction for depreciation on all structures due to age, as well as look at any functional or economic adjustments, should that in fact impact the value. And finally, we determine the value of the land and add it to the building calculations to produce an overall valuation. Next slide, please. So what draws our attention to a property? It's typically one of the following. It's a market sale, a request from a municipality or a property owner, a request for reconsideration or an appeal, and one of the largest ones is building permit activity. So our role is to take building permits and building plans and turn them into assessment. All municipalities, including East Gwillimbury, rely on MPAC's assessments to levy their property taxes. So the sooner MPAC can deliver these assessments, the sooner municipalities can realize the new revenue. Every year, we process on average 300,000 building permits for new development and renovations. In East Gwillimbury, in 2023, we processed approximately 3,000 building permits. So we're the only organization in Ontario with a complete data set of all building permits. And our understanding of this gives us a unique perspective on ways to modernize and exchange to support our municipal partners. Next slide, please. So after we assess a property or change an assessment, we mail the property owner a property assessment notice. Sometimes property owners do not agree with our assessed value. So a property owner may connect with you to let you know that they disagree with their assessment. But it's important to remember that property assessments are not taxation. So if you get an inquiry, you can help us by asking the property owner a few questions. If they could have sold their property on January 1st, 2016 for the assessed value, and if they have visited About My Property. About My Property is our people-facing information where property owners can go on and take a look at the information that we have on file for their property and determine if that information is correct. If they have done so, have they also done a comparable search to look at other properties of similar nature to their own to see whether the assessed values fall in line with their property? If they have done that, and even if they haven't, and if they still disagree with their assessment, then they have the option to file what's called a request for reconsideration, or RFR, and we will review it free of charge. There's also ability to file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board. So the fastest way to start a review is to file a request for reconsideration on About My Property. However, property owners can also file that on our website at mpac.ca. The deadline to file an RFR, or request for reconsideration, is printed on the property assessment notice. Where a property owner has not received a notice for updated details, the deadline for filing for the 2024 taxation year is April 2nd, 2024. Next slide, please. So now let's move on to the relationship between property taxes and property assessment. So property assessments distribute taxes. They don't determine the taxes paid. So when a province-wide assessment update does occur, the most important factor is not how much the assessed value of a property has changed, but rather how the assessed value has changed relative to the average change in the class in that community. This concept is explained in the Property Assessment and Taxation Toolkit that's available on our website at mpac.ca. And next slide, please. So we've implemented a strategy to address the misconceptions about the relationship between assessed value and taxation. That includes resources to support municipalities with property owner questions in the communities that you serve. The Property Assessment and Taxation Toolkit can help municipalities, including elected officials, to mitigate misinformation and provide support and resources to educate and inform property owners. In the toolkit, you can find a video entitled How Your Property Taxes Are Calculated, and that's based on the assessed value of a property owner's home. After this presentation, I can email a link to that property assessment and taxation toolkit, and please take the time to watch the video as it is quite informative. It is also on our website at mpac.ca, but I can send an email and send that out directly to you. Next slide, please. So we support our municipal stakeholders on a regular basis with direct council or elected official meetings. So that might be via orientation sessions or one-on-one meetings. Municipal conferences. Our municipal team will be attending roughly around 15 to 20 conferences in 2024. We have webinars and training videos available, and ongoing support for the various products and services that we do provide. We have a monthly newsletter called In Touch, and this will help to keep you up to date on what's happening at MPAC. So if not already, please make sure you subscribe to In Touch. You can also scan the QR code to see our resources or visit our municipal support page on our website at mpac.ca. And next slide, please. So to close off, I just thought I would share your local East Gwillimbury assessment base as of the 2023 roll close. So just over 84.5% of your base comes from the residential portfolio, with farms coming in at 5.67%, followed by commercial at just over 5%. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions or you're simply looking for resources, please feel free to reach out to myself or Natasha. And I would like to extend my thanks to you, Mr. Chair, and members of council for having us here today. And I will now take any questions, should you have any.
Great, thank you so much. I love that that last slide there and demonstrating where all the tax base is coming from and the breakdown of that. Like from the commercial side, seeing that 5% that really drives home the challenges that we are having within the municipality and what we're trying to strive for improvement on. So thank you. Is there any questions from the committee? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Ms. DeSouza. I do appreciate your, you and I have actually met in person, so I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think I said to you at the time that we met last year that it was the first time I'm on my 4th term here at council, and I think this is the first time that MPAC has made a presentation to us. So I wanted to acknowledge that effort and that outreach that's being done. I did want to ask a question on behalf of a resident who's recently contacted me. Obviously, we finished our budget process and there was a tax increase put in, and people are paying attention, I guess, to taxation right now because it's the turn of the year. And this resident wanted to understand better why he was paying a certain amount of money for, let's say, a townhouse in Queensville compared to his son, who's living in a townhouse in Aurora. And they're, in his mind, comparable properties, and yet his property tax bill is much higher. Obviously, we know through BMA studies and so on that we have one of the lowest mill rates, I guess, one of the lowest rates of taxation comparably to York Region. So I'm at a loss to explain how that happens. And maybe you can help me understand how you look at things on a more regional level.
Sure,
Please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, there's a lot of differences, as I had alluded to in one of my slides. Our analysis tool considers over 200 factors. So I would really have to take a look at the property owner's property. It could be that the sales define that this property is worth more than where his son is located, and we really are based on sales. So what the sales are showing when it goes into our analysis tool, it creates we call it current value assessment or market value. So it creates that market value. So if people are paying X number of dollars to get into a certain place, and that could be based on a variety of factors. It could be that the quality of construction of the home is a little more than this resident's son's house in Aurora. The economic neighborhood that we have derived in this area could be different from, more than likely different from his son's in Aurora. The lot size, it could be different. And there's different factors based on, so I would we could connect if you wanted, and you can maybe give me some more information on exactly what it is, and I could take a look into his property and his son's and see. I mean, has he filed, do you know if he's filed a request for reconsideration?
I was trying to get him there.
Okay.
The challenge becomes that he is telling me that his entire neighborhood is thinking that their assessment is too high. So I wondered, because this entire neighborhood didn't exist on January 1st, 2016. And so I wanted to kind of delve into that. That was my next question, Mr. Chair, was to kind of delve into the understanding of how that January 1st, 2016 assessment is working, because as you've said, we've had 3,000 building permits. And so what you're doing is you're looking at what that new build would have been worth in 2016. And unfortunately, given that I'm a real estate agent, I could actually look up how much properties have increased. They've increased by 112% in East Gwillimbury. And I used that for December 31st, 2015. So how is MPAC able to look back in history and assess a property when it didn't exist?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we would look at the different factors that would have existed if the property were built back then. So we would look at comparables. So we would, our assessment model that runs would look at, it would compare, it wouldn't be comparing, let's say, a townhouse to a single family. It would be looking at similar sized townhomes on a similar sized lot in a similar type of economic neighborhood, similar amount of stories. You wouldn't compare a second story to just a bungalow. So it's going to look at that, but at properties that had sold in and around that legislative valuation date. So it's going to look at 2015, 2016 to try to approximately get to that January 1st, 2016 value. So it does have to take a look at comparable properties that are similar to the newly built. So there would be a difference in terms of age, but that would get adjusted in the price, in the value, the assessed value that we come out with. So.
I think it's something that I'd like to see you and our municipal staff working a little bit closer on and having a deeper dive into this, because what I did is I actually went and looked at some of the assessed values. And so there's a property on Jim Mortensen, which is Queensville. It was sold after it took possession in 2017 for $431,000, and yet its assessed value through MPAC is $554,000. So there's a discrepancy even but what's happening in the market, even looking behind. And so I think we really do need to have a better look at how we're evaluating and how we're assessing our new construction, given the constraints of that 2016 date. One final question, Mr. Chair, if I may. What is MPAC's plan to address that discrepancy when those new assessed values, and it's not just an East Gwillimbury problem, it's a province-wide problem, when you decide to do, let's say it's January 1st, 2025 as an evaluation date, or 2024, what's going to happen to property tax bills across the province? How's that going to fall out? Is there any predictions?
And through you, Mr. Chair, I also wanted to note that if it's a new build and it's sold from the developer to the person, we don't look at builder sales. We would look at open market sales. So as long as it's transacted on the open market sale. Okay. Just wanted to put that in there because, some people do say, oh, my builder, I paid this much. And so that's fine. In terms of property taxes, I might have to put that back to the finance staff. We don't comment on property taxes, but in terms of if there is a new whenever the new assessment is called, they've already started looking into, values and, kind of approximating what dates, looking at the various years to see where the values are shifting to, and taking a look at that. And we have checks and balances we look through. We refine. It goes to our property valuation staff to refine and go through and what's called fine tune the values and ensure that the sales are aligning with our values. And so all of that work is done in the background in preparation for a new assessment update. So that's the type of thing that would go on. And again, if there are properties like that where it's sold for $400,000. We would have to ensure that it is open market, not encumbered, so it's not like an estate sale or something like that. Then we'd have to see, okay, what is the reason for that? And if again we can connect, and if you wanted to email me that information, then I can take a look into it and have the valuation staff take a look into it. And if it comes down to it, then the property owner can file a request for reconsideration, like I said, and we can review that free of charge for them to see.
Ms. DeSouza, I think my concern is more not just about one individual property owner. It's about an entire neighborhood. It's about entire subdivisions that didn't exist in 2016, that have been built and sold prior to the current dates, and their assessments aren't matching. They're above what is being sold, even in that period of time.
Okay.
So for me, it's not just one particular property owner, it's a neighborhood. And I think that's where I suggested that our staff and your staff need to connect a little further to try and delve a little further at that on behalf of our residents.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, definitely, yeah. Definitely connect with me and let me know what the subdivision is, and I can always speak with the valuation staff, and then we can connect with you and the other staff for sure, yeah.
Thank you both. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Johns. So I'll give you a scenario, and hopefully you can help me out, because that's certainly what I'm looking for. And I think, you know, all of us up here and residents need to be able to understand this whole process a little bit easier. I'm not so sure how you make it easier. But so I had a call from a resident who told me that he was living in a new custom-built home. His taxes were significantly higher than other comparable homes in his neighborhood. Now, if he's living in a new home, I don't know how comparable that is to the older homes in the neighborhood, so that I didn't go there. But so his question was, his taxes are higher because his home was recently assessed compared to the 2016 assessment, so we're kind of going down the same rabbit hole here. And he's hoping that the assessment happens soon, so everybody is going to get hit with higher taxes like him. So I'm not sure what my proper answer is, and I'm hoping you can kind of steer us in the right way. I think I handled it okay. I didn't have to call Mr. Marshall for help. But anyway, I look forward to what you might think about that.
Sure. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, so if it's a new custom-built home, and he's paying more. Again, there's factors that go into it. Is it's custom built through a builder or is custom built through him? We would go out, we would assess it, we would take a look at the quality of the construction, and that may cause the value to go up. How much of a lot size is he sitting on? That also may cause the value to go up. Now, in terms of property taxes, again, I might defer that to the finance staff here, because we would give an assessed value, and then the taxes get placed on that. So it depends really on what does he consider comparable? Because sometimes, you know, we do look at the quality of construction, and that does matter. If it really is a custom home, like one of the larger built homes with more finer details being put into it, then, you know, that's finer materials, and then the value goes up based on that. So we would have to kind of take a look at that property to see, again, where the value difference is, because we do look at, like I said, over 200 points, right? So it's kind of, if you wanted to connect with me after and send me that information, I can take a look into it to see where that value difference might be and what the comparables are that he's looking at. So, you know, I'm not too sure what he's looking at, but if you wanted to, like I said, you can email me and I can take a look deeper into it. It's something that, it's a lot to, like you said, to explain the finer details. You really have to get into it to see where that is and then what can be explained, you know, out easier to the resident. You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Lahey.
Thank you very much, through you, Acting Mayor Johns, and thank you very much for the presentation. I also had in the summer at the AMO conference in London, I benefited from attending one of your sessions presented by MPAC, and so I went back into my notes prior to your presentation because there was some interesting statistics that were shared, and I wanted to visit those. But first I wanted to ask you about the app that you were promoting at the conference, which is about My Property app, or about my property app, and you mentioned you referred In Touch here during your presentation. Could you clarify for residents, people who are interested in knowing how their properties are assessed and the taxes, what is the best way to go about researching that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so About My Property is our outward-facing information for property owners, property taxpayers. So they can go on aboutmyproperty.ca, and if they have their property assessment notice, they have the key and a password on there. They can log in. If they don't have that, they can call into our customer contact center, and someone can reset that for them. And when they go in, they have access to looking at their property details, what we have on file. They can see how we've assessed it. All of the information is there, so they can check to ensure that what we have on there is correct. If anything has changed, I mean, they can let us know that as well. If there's pending building permits, we can, and we've picked that up, they should be able to see that on there as well. They also have the ability to do a comparable search of assessed values in their neighborhood. So as I was talking, they can go on and take a look at different assessed values on properties that they may feel are comparable. So they have access to 24 detailed property searches. So they get 24 of them that they may say, okay, you know, the one across the street from me is exactly like mine. Let me take a look at it. And then they have access to 100 snapshots. So this is just a brief snapshot. So they may think, okay, you know, the one around the corner is kind of comparable, but maybe not really, but I want to take a look at it. So they have access to 100 of those. So they can file a request for reconsideration directly through there. So it's quite interesting for them to go on and ensure that, again, what we have on file for their property is correct, so that their assessment is correct when it comes out to the town. So that's something that it's actually quite good. I've been on it myself as a property owner. I've taken a look at the information that we have on file and whatnot. So it's something that I encourage, if you are talking to residents and they have questions, to take a look at about my property. Now, In Touch it's our newsletter that we send out to municipalities. So we send that out on a monthly basis to municipalities, all the departments that may sign up for it, elected officials. So please make sure to sign up. It does contain information about what's happening at MPAC, might be different projects that are happening, different collaboration that we're doing with various municipalities. And it's just a way for you to just get a brief update as to what is going on at MPAC.
Thank you very much. I had a couple more follow-up questions. So in my life prior to becoming a town councillor, and I continue to be a professional art appraiser, so I'm familiar with the three different approaches that you discussed: the cost, the income, and the sales comparison, and I can appreciate the subtleties. I often have individuals coming to me, say with a vase, and they say, I saw the exact same thing on the Antique Roadshow, but it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, and then there are many factors that go into the process of finding a value conclusion, and the same is true in real estate and properties. So while attending the AMO conference, they shared some interesting statistics, and I wanted to ask you today. They were using statistics from 2022, but they were talking about the municipalities with the highest growth, and they gave a top 10 list of those, and East Gwillimbury wasn't on that list. So I was just kind of curious about that. But they also shared information about the total number of residential building permits in Ontario in 2022, and that figure was 108,080, which was down by 11.63% in 2022. And I was curious if you were aware of the number of residential building permits in 2023. You mentioned specifically in East Gwillimbury there were 3,000, but does it continue to be on a downward trend?
Through you, Mr. Chair. They said that there was over 300,000 building permits that were processed on average. As of 2023, I am not too sure. Sorry, I'm going to defer. Natasha, is there?
We haven't through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't finalized those numbers as of yet to display publicly, but we do know that it's probably trending in a similar manner from 2023.
So if you wouldn't mind repeating that just for the mic, if you could,
So
Ms. D'Souza?
we haven't finalized the amount of building permits that were processed exactly in 2023, but it does seem like it's on a downward trend as well, similar to 2022. But that hasn't been finalized and out in public yet.
Okay, I'm wondering if it is making the assumption that it is on a downward trend, despite the encouragement of the province to build more homes faster and to build more attainable homes. I'm just curious about how that impacts growth and our tax base if building permits continue to go downwards. So.
Through you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. Yes, we receive a monthly feed of building permits from municipalities. So the building departments put together a monthly list, or we get it via a web service, which is uploaded into our system. And so what we do is our valuation staff will take a look at the listing that they get that's uploaded, and they will go out and start to inspect to see how far along the construction is, where it is at, and see, okay, is it going to be ready to be assessed. To be ready to be assessed, it has to be commenced to be used or occupied. And so we will frequently connect with municipalities to ask whether it's gotten its final occupancy or where it might be at that stage. And so based on that, we will decide whether for that year it will be ready to be assessed or not. So it really does depend on other factors out in the market as to is the construction slowing down? What is happening? Where is it standing right now? Will it be assessed for this year? So it really does depend, but we are out there and, we do frequently connect with the developers. Let's say for residential, we'll go out and try to get a site plan, try to get the information. We'll connect with the builders of like shopping plazas and talk to them regarding, getting the rent rolls so that we can start assessing those. So again, it does depend on how far along and how fast they are building that to see. So based on whatever building permits are being submitted to us, we start to action those as soon as we get them, basically just to see where it's at in the construction process. So.
Sorry, just to add to that.
Sorry, if you could come up to the mic, just so our folks virtually can hear you as well. Thank you so much.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add to that, it doesn't necessarily mean if there's a downward trend in building permits that the value of the new assessment would be affected. You have to look at the quality and the type of permit. So there are lots of permits that are taken out maybe for a toilet or for a deck, whereas as opposed to a new build. So we would really have to take a look at the type of permit and do some analysis around that to really tell you what's happening with regards to new assessment.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crone, do you have any questions, comments for our presenters?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I would just go back to, and I think Councillor Roy-DiClemente touched upon it, but I know it's been 2016 since we had the last assessment. Not sure when the next one is going to be done. I'm worried about the shock it could have to our residents. And so is this, when you go to implement the new assessments, is that something that's phased in over a period of time? What's the mechanics of, if you can share that? For me, the ultimate goal is that we provide as less stress as we can to the resident at the end of the day. So be curious what you.
Sure.
What your
Through you,
approach is.
Mr. Chair. Yes, so the provincial government would be the ones to decide on the valuation date, as well as whether how often the reassessments will then be occurring, as well as the phased-in values. Whether it will be phased in, we're not too sure, so we do await on direction from the province with respect to that, as to the new valuation date, as well as is it going to be every 4 years like it has been, or is it going to be something that's every year? And are there going to be phase-ins again? So we do await confirmation for that from the province. And once they do let us know, then we will begin to prepare for that.
Great, thanks. So if not seeing any other questions, comments from the committee, pausing for that opportunity. Yeah, Councillor Lahey.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to follow up with just one last point. So in the presentation at the AMO conference, the municipalities, the top 10 municipalities with the highest growth were listed as Toronto, Ottawa, Mississauga, Vaughan, Oakville, Hamilton, Brampton, Markham, London, and Richmond Hill in that order. And so I'm wondering if after the meeting today, if it would be possible for you to follow up. I'd be interested in knowing why East Gwillimbury isn't on that list of top 10, because we refer to ourselves as the fastest growing municipality in all of Canada. So I'm wondering why there's that discrepancy between MPAC and how we're promoting ourselves and how we view ourselves with that comment. So if MPAC could show us where we are on that list from your perspective, I would be interested in knowing that information. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Sure, I will definitely take a look at that and follow up with you.
Seeing no other questions, comments, I will put it to the committee if looking for a motion to receive if there is not any amendments to the motion as it is written. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we receive with thanks and that we direct staff to meet with our finance staff to discuss some of the issues that were raised during our discussion today.
Is there any questions, comments on that amendment? Seeing none, so we have a mover, seconder.
And committee.
Oh, that's right, we're in committee. Okay, we'll give a pause. Any other questions, comments with that motion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So folks, we're moving to corporate services now. This is Councillor Carruthers' area where she would normally chair the committee. I am, with her scheduled absence, I am going to chair this this portion of the agenda. So we've got G1 is the presentation of our environmental strategy. And I'm hoping I can have a mover to table this. Can I get a mover? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, thank you so much. And that is for corporate service presentation, January 16, 2024, entitled The Environmental Strategy. And the environment, okay, here we go. Ms. Gandhi, do you want to speak to anything before Ms. Ross takes it away?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. It gives me great pleasure to bring to you through Chris Ross, our Manager of Environmental Initiatives, to present to Council the draft environmental strategy. This has been a labor of love over the last year, but I have to recognize really the decades of work that have gone into paving the path for the work that we've done on the environmental strategy. This is not a yesterday project. This is has been in the work for decades. So recognizing all of the work that has gone into the plan, the path itself is outlined in the draft strategy that is before you. And so Ms. Ross, through her enormous efforts over the past year in meeting with pretty much anybody who would talk to her, has really worked diligently at putting together this, what I believe to be comprehensive document. And this is, so it marks a milestone for us as a community, and certainly provides for additional opportunities for members of council and the community to provide further input before the final document is presented to council. And with that, I ask that Ms. Ross present the draft strategy to you.
Wonderful,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members of council. Thank you for having me today. I'm happy to present to you the final draft of the environmental strategy. The purpose of today's presentation is to let you know how we are, how the document is. I think you were distributed the PDF of the document, and so now I'm going to talk about that. So basically the purpose of this presentation, of this strategy, is to guide staff, residents, and businesses about prioritizing environmental action. And the strategy also compiles the work the town has been doing, is doing, and is going to continue doing. And it focuses on the broad themes that have community support. In that regard, you can see in page 7 of the document that you can, the page 7 speaks how to read this strategy. And this strategy is divided into 5 thematic areas, and each section starts with a description of the area, an objective, the most relevant achievement, and then the list of initiatives that are proposed. Also, every initiative is further broken down into 5 categories, and these categories are legislation, policy, operations, and events and education. And please note here that when we refer in the environmental strategy about operations, we are not referring on our engineering and public works operations, but the overall corporation operations. So this word was suggested to be changed to operational, but doesn't, I don't know. So operations it is, but when we are talking about operations in the environmental strategy, it's about the overall operations, not the operations department. So a little bit of the background of the process. This process started way before I started, and I would like to have here a milestone. On May 2021, when staff came to present to council about best practices recommendations, and there was this request for staffing. So here I am, a year after that. And also at the same time, it started an inventory of current actions and initiatives, and that went through 2021 and 2022. I took that over from the team that was doing the inventory, and then we did an analysis in 2022 between June and October of the environmental policy context for the town, looking at the international, national, provincial, regional, and then the municipal context to see how everything we do is linked to what is in the upper level. And in the meantime, between February and September, there was this extensive engagement with the community and stakeholders. And we also consider the programs and opportunities that are out there for the town to take advantage of. And as a result, I am here presenting today the environmental strategy document as a draft. So far, is there any question? Not yet? So you've seen this before, how we divided the strategy in 5 areas: land, water, air, biodiversity, and outreach. Each thematic area has an objective. For land, the objective is to promote, enhance, and restore the land through sustainable management of land resources. And to contribute to this objective, there are 11 initiatives. 7 of those are in progress and 4 are new. When you see in the document that an initiative is in progress, like there is 2, in progress or new. When we refer to in progress, is an initiative that is in the budget and business plan. Either is starting, has started, or is in implementation phase right now. For the proposed section is all the new initiatives that have been incorporated as actions moving forward. For water, the objective is to protect, promote the restoration of the health and function of natural water systems. And to contribute to this, we have 9 initiatives. 6 of them are in progress, and 3 are new. When we refer to air, the objective for air is to improve local air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions through healthy, connected, and efficient communities. To contribute to this, we have 8 initiatives. 7 of them are in progress, 2 starting this year with the climate adaptation plan and community and corporate energy plan. For biodiversity, there are 8 initiatives. The objective is to protect, preserve, and sustainably manage a healthy diversity of native species. And to contribute to this, we have 5 initiatives. 5 of them are in progress and 3 are new. And for outreach, the objective is to promote and enhance the connection between residents and the environment. We have 7 brand new initiatives, but it's not brand new actions. I mean, even though they haven't been listed before, they have been there somewhere. So the outreach is going to start with the outreach program that we are developing this year, and then developing and implementing this year. So when we speak about the alignment to the strategic plan, I am very happy to say that this strategy has been, I don't know if it is the daughter of the strategic plan, but they are very closely related. So this strategy has been built in harmony with the strategic plan, and I am happy to see that the strategic plan from the beginning had sustainability at the center, and then environmental stewardship as one of the strategic priorities. So even though it directly aligns with environmental stewardship, we have to think about as a holistic way of doing things. And that's why it's so important that sustainability is at the core and center of what we do. Because when we speak about the environment, we are not talking about that far away concept of the Amazon or the boreal forest. We are talking, and I think I said this before here, we are talking about the air we breathe every second, the food we eat, the water we drink. That is the environment. And so the environment is the concept within and around us. And I think it is important to note that, because that is also linked with building complete communities, with excellence in what we do, and all the other strategic priorities the town has defined. So there are costs and benefits. It's not only asking money, it's also having some benefits of having an environmental strategy. One of them is environmental protection. And when we talk about that, is prioritizing and implementing measures to protect the environment. And these can include like reducing the waste that residents and the corporation produces, reducing water consumption, and improving our conservation of wild species. It's also related to compliance with regulations and to ensure that the municipality is in compliance with environmental regulations and laws. And this also helps the municipality to avoid legal issues when we talk about, yes, we are promoting a healthy environment, yes, we are taking care of the air and that. So we are also complying with that. It also saves us some money. If we reduce the energy we consume, the bill is going down as well. It also brings something about reputation. And I would like to stop a little bit here because this reputation part is something that residents spoke about when we were in the workshops. And there is this pride that EG has been a leader in terms of environmental stewardship and environmental actions. And there is this need from residents to keep being that in the region and around us. So it's not only because it's good for businesses, it's also because that makes people happy. We always feel good when we do something good, right? And so, yeah, that. Also innovation and competitive advantage to drive innovation within the municipality and lead the development of new products. And in here, I have to say that EG was very innovative when was one of the first, I don't want to say the first, but I think we were one of the first, if not the first municipality to develop green development standards. And I have this, I was talking with the Clean Air Council last year, December, I think it was. They were trying to help us to do our development standards. And for whatever reason, they thought we don't have development standards. And then when they went through and they were like, what? We didn't know that EG, being such a small municipality, has such good development standards. So it's something good to point out there. Employment, employee engagement and motivation. And we need to be engaged and motivated to do more. It's not that we are not doing enough, we are not doing things, it's that we could do more. It's also related with leadership and community engagement and partnership building. And in this regard, we've been talking with the region, with the Conservation Authority, and there are already some plans that we are starting to take advantage of with the Conservation Authority and the region. And so all these builds onto environmental sustainability. So you see that we have environmental protection at the beginning and then environmental sustainability. When we speak about environmental protection is the action, environmental sustainability is the result. So we are promoting environmental protection to have environmental sustainability. So the funny part, financial implications. Please, Warren, close your eyes. The environmental initiatives, we have environmental initiatives incorporated in the 2024 approved budget and business plan. So no money for now. We also have the Climate Change Initiatives Reserve Fund that was established in 2022, and we will need a strategy to keep feeding that reserve. We don't have an answer yet, but it's coming your way at some point. And then efforts will be made to apply for external funding. So far, I'm super happy to share with you that we got our first non-monetary grant with the Ontario Resource Centre for Climate Change Adaptation. It's non-monetary because instead of us hiring a consultant team, we are having a whole team of experts to help us develop our climate adaptation plan. And if we want to put a monetary value on that, it will be around $5,000. For that service, we are going to have them for a year, helping us come in here and whatever we need to develop our climate adaptation plan. So that is a good news too. That was good to start the year with. So, as a conclusion, the environmental strategy is the product of extensive research and engagement with the community, and it will help us embrace a portfolio of initiatives that contribute to achieving environmental stewardship. It fosters collaboration with community and local and regional partners and collaborators, and it is this reflection of a holistic view of what we do, how we do things, and why we're doing them. And it provides a roadmap to develop comprehensive plans and projects. And when we talk about the roadmap, it's interesting that when I arrived here, the position, let's say there was not an environmental initiatives manager before, but there was a sustainability manager and things like that. And it is interesting for me to note that from 2012 till I arrived, there was a bunch of stuff and things that EG was doing, even though there was not a specific strategy saying. So I just think, sorry, I'm just rambling, I think. But I just think if EG could achieve that without me, imagine, with the strategy, where we can go with the strategy right now and with the community. I think that is very valuable, the relationship this municipality has with the municipality and how engaged the community is in terms of environmental initiatives. So next steps for this, we are going to post the environmental strategy on the website to gather public feedback on the strategy. It's interesting to make the difference here because we had this strategy built with the community. Now we want to show them, this is what we got from you. What do you think about it? And also with council. So I will please ask you to kindly review the document, and we will arrange meetings with councillors to have like a one-on-one conversation about what are your feelings, your comments, your opinions, and your suggestions for this strategy. And based on this feedback, I am going to come back to you to present the final strategy in the form of a report for your approval. So the next slide, this slide you've seen it before, is a quote that it really talks to me. It really moved me when I heard it, and I had to go back to the recording of that session. And it's what we do, it's why we do what we do, and I just feel that it's something that needs to be reflected, and yeah, I just want to share that amazing message with you. So if this is the end of my presentation, if there is any question.
Thank you. You clearly lead with your heart and do all the work that you do at such a passionate way. And I smiled to myself when I did see the quote in the package, because it was Councillor Foster that also pulled out how moved he was by that as well. So I would just say, before I come back to me, I just want to say thank you for putting your heart into your work, because it clearly shows. So is there any questions, comments from the committee? Councillor Crone, yes, I need to look all the way around the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, through you, to our presenter. Thank you, Ms. Ross, for your efforts on this. I know it's been a journey, and thank you for all your hard work with the Environmental Advisory Committee. I guess for me, a lot of good work in here, and it's ambitious. When you're looking at this and in its aggregate, are there any benchmarks that you see that will help you determine if we're being successful? So what are the measures of success that you're trying to, in your mind, that you will look at to say, okay, yes, we had an impact here. We're moving the needle. I don't expect, all the environmental crises of the world to be resolved through East Gwillimbury, but what are some of your measures of success that we can look to down the road and say, yeah, that was the right decision to implement that strategy? Just curious what your thoughts are around that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a very interesting question, because as this year, our metrics have been the amount of people that has been involved in developing the strategy. And participating in the different events that we've promoted from the environmental perspective. I cannot offer that from this year onwards, but it is the goal of this program to start measuring our greenhouse gas emissions at the corporate and community level, to measure the amount of waste that is reduced, that goes to the landfill. That is already happening, and EG is already the N6 municipality with the lowest production rate. So I don't know how much we can improve that, but I guess we could improve there as well. The other metrics, it would be the water consumption. And I also know that EG has a lot of work advanced in water consumption, so it will be interesting to know how we can improve that number. However, those are the three metrics that I am looking, like in hard numbers, the kind of stuff that I would like to move the needle towards less numbers. I want to have more numbers in resident engagement in environmental events and activities and education, and less numbers into the other three: greenhouse gas emissions, water consumption, and waste production.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lahey.
Thank you very much, through you, Acting Mayor Johns. So my question is with regard to, you brought up the topic of recycling and reducing waste, and what part will the plant that is going to be built, and the estimated time of opening is 2026 in Ward 3 of East Gwillimbury, to recycle the bio-waste from all of York Region? What part will that play? Will that plant play in EG's plan for recycling?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is a lot of moving pieces right now in terms of waste management and the Blue Box program. So that is a very hard to answer question. That is a question right now hard to answer. But of course, EG is working on that, and the engineering department is highly involved in that work. So it's something that EG is working directly with the region in order to have that implemented. I don't know if General Director of Public Works wants to say something about it? Sorry.
No problem. Well, Chris is exactly right. There are a lot of moving pieces on that right now, and even the future of the Blue Box program is going to be taken over by the producers in the future, and as a result, they will be deciding where all that gets disposed and how they're going to go about that process. So we will inform council as some of that information comes forward and we know more about it.
What is the plan for the waste management? Is more than the management part, is the education portion. How we can educate our residents, how can we motivate them to have their composters at home. That is also closely linked with the gardens, with community gardens and family gardens, that is linked with food security. So the idea is to connect dots and to have influence in what we can influence in the community.
Any other questions, comments? So I have two comments. One of them directly relates to what you're saying, and then you open the door on another thing that I just want to lean into a little bit. But on a comment off of what your metrics were going to be to track success, you talked about what you saw as metrics that you wanted to kind of lean into and push. Just from a comment perspective, I see that those are all excellent goals, but I think from a community perspective, sometimes it's hard to grasp what success looks like in a tangible aspect, and being able to, I would love to, as we're implementing things, we see some real wins. When you speak about the ability to for reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, I think that when we go out and report that we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we were at X amount of tons and we took it to X amount of tons, because we can't see that, we can't touch it. What is the impact for understanding that? I know I'm kind of take it down to a base level, but in previous meetings and then what we champion and pushing through in the budget, and I'll speak to you about this on one-on-one meetings, but I just wanted to share it here, my thoughts. The fact that we were able to, as we're exploring the tree bylaw and we're getting funding for trees, I really do see that there's no better way to rally a community around an environmental project that is tangible and can understand the lasting impact as planting trees. And I think that there's opportunities now that we've built in through our budget, there's opportunities at the region, and I would love to see the tangibles and kind of taking that one step further. You called out the community garden, and sorry, you said the connectivity of the touch points. I think that's what you're leading to. I would love that, and then seeing that as it impacts further into what the greenhouse gas emission reductions are. I just worry that we get lost in our initiative if they can't, if residents don't have the ability to see and touch on their first stages of kind of rolling this out. I don't know, feel free to push back on me and say I disagree, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I not necessarily disagree or agree, but I think greenhouse gas reduction means electrification and also reduction of energy consumption. And that reduction means lower bills. So that is the tangible that residents will have in their hands. It's good for business, I would say.
Love it. And so I think that hanging on to what the tangible is versus just what the metric is and being able to share that in the narrative is going to be critically important. So that's awesome. One other comment, you joked around about the non-monetary grant that you received, and that is great. With some other municipalities, I'm not sure if I should direct this as Ms. Gandhi or our CAO here, but it's not like we have a grant writer on staff. Is that correct? We do not have a grant writer on staff. And so what ends up happening is that in this area, I like that you joked around about it, because the reality is that I feel like that response was given in the fact that I am carrying all this, and well, we didn't get a grant, but we got a non-monetary grant and it was great. I think as we move forward as a municipality, even though that we are small, I think that there is a large opportunity to look at what grant writing looks like in a one individual role where they connect in with each departments, because the framework on grant responses typically there's a framework and then we need to get the specialized input. But the fact is that everything that is on everybody's desks from a staff perspective, we will never be able to receive and fully achieve the benefit of the financial grants that exist unless we have somebody that is doing it from the front of their desk as opposed to on the side or on the back. And if you're looking for a return on investment, if you look anywhere from like 3 to 5 times to get a return on investment from a monetary side versus the salary, I think that there is, especially in a municipality our size, the ability to receive grant funding in that dollar amount for the cost that it would, for the, I was going to say expense, but I don't like to say staff or expense, they're an asset. For the cost of the asset to receive that dollars back, there's a large return on investment that would impact from a budgetary standpoint because our budgets are smaller compared to others. I don't know if there's any feedback, I will throw that out there. Ms. Gandhi and Ms. Marshall, both. I don't know if you want to fight over the mic on this, but I'll give it to Ms. Gandhi first.
I can start through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's certainly, I'll leave the yes/no answer directly to our treasurer. But in terms of so also aggregating and communicating to the public about the receipt of these types of opportunities, it's important that we do that as well so that people know that we're going out there to look for other sources of funding. And that's something I know that Chris, when we became aware of this, immediately contacted our Director of Communications to inform her of that. And so we'll find ways in working also with the funder, because usually they have rules around how this type of information is communicated. We will make sure we will endeavor to get that information out. I will leave the yes/no answer about the position around grant funding writing to our treasurer.
Thanks for calling out the communication piece, because not only is that good for our residents, also good internally, because it builds an excitement internally that that others want to participate in. Mr. Marshall, do you have any comments?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. There have been some instances where we have done grant submissions where we've engaged a company that does grant writing for us. It wasn't very expensive, but we have had various amount of success with them. But when in those cases where it's very complex and extensive, we have engaged a couple of those.
Yeah, thank you. And in my experience in different sectors too, and specifically the charitable sector, what I've found is the outsource versus the front of desk and full commitment to the organization and the individuals within it seem to drive the better result. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of thoughts, and one was just coming back to those key metrics is I think it boils down to, and we sort of touched on it, but I wanted to be even more clear about it, is it's not so much to be able to communicate that, you know, we reduced greenhouse gas emissions or we diverted this much waste from our green bins, but it's to put it into perspective of what that means in a tangible way. So we reduced greenhouse gases and therefore we saved X amount of money on our energy bills. Or maybe there's an initiative that says, you know what, we've got to figure out a way to stop putting our jack-o'-lantern pumpkins in our green bins, and maybe there's a source through our agricultural community or another, or a community garden that could use them, or a wildlife preserve where the chickens and the squirrels want to eat it, or whatever it is. But to be able to create those initiatives so that it becomes meaningful, I think that's the important piece of it. It's not so much just to measure it, but to explain why it's important. And then secondly, to come back to the sort of the idea of a staff person and, you know, whether there's a grant writer on staff. I think we have several dozen grant writers. And I want to continue to invest. We've increased our training and our training budget. I think it may be worthwhile for select staff to be sent to a workshop on grant writing. I know I attended one that was held, this was probably about 15 years ago, when I was sitting on the library board and we were learning how to write grants and so on. And I think it's a valuable skill set that any member of our municipal team might appreciate having that skill set. And certainly, you know, looking at a position in the future, just as we did when we decided that it was time for a procurement manager. I think that maybe having somebody who's responsible for alternate sources of revenue for the municipality, be it grants, be it sponsorship, be it, you know, anything that's not taxation, I think is an important step for us to take. I don't know if it's this year, next year, or 5 years from now, but it's certainly something that we can plan and look towards. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that comment. And I think that you very much cleaned up my kind of front of desk thought, because it could be not front of desk thought, but it could be a roles and responsibilities within existing roles. So having said all of that, any other questions, comments for Ms. Ross as she stands there proudly waving her flag? Seeing none, we had the motion, so all in favor of receipt? All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So again, just to kind of re-summarize, we're still under corporate services here. Ms. Gandhi, did you have anything else that you wanted to speak to today, or?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of committee, any questions under this setting? Seeing none, we will move forward. Legal and legislative, that is mine. So we have one report under legal and legislative, and it is regarding LLS 2024-1. It's a lease amending and an extension agreement with Rogers Communication on 19000 Leslie Street. So I'm looking for a mover for this, so we can get this tabled. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, and I will turn this over to Ms. Ingram to speak to the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a straightforward request of council to extend a current lease that we have in place with Rogers Communication with respect to a little storage building that sits on this Civic Center property at the back of the property. It basically stores Rogers equipment that is related to its telecom infrastructure. And it also houses some tents and such that we use for outdoor market events. The request is to extend it for 5 years with an option, an additional option at our pleasure to extend it for an additional 5 years after that. The amount is not a great amount, but it's set out in the body of the report in terms of the amount of money Rogers will pay us for the use of that space. The final request of council or of committee today is that this might be advanced, the bylaw with respect to this matter might be advanced to tonight's council session rather than deferring it to council in the next month. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ms. Ingram. Is there any questions, comments regarding this? Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you. Given that it's my motion, I'd be happy to amend it to reflect that that this recommendation be ratified at our meeting later today. And I just wanted to congratulate staff on an escalation clause of 10% a year.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Any other items under legal from the committee? Janice?
None at this point.
Ms.
Thank you,
Ingram,
Mr.
thank
Chair.
you. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us all the way through to P. Under I to O, there's nothing there. So that brings us to our adjournment, folks. So I'm looking for, yep.
We usually go through each to make sure that the general managers don't have anything, and I have an understanding that Ms. Berger might, so I don't know if any of the other GMs also have something to
I
bring
wasn't
forward.
notified that there was any other items that they want to speak to, so
It
my
was
apologies. So
my area to chair, so that's why I didn't.
fair
mention it.
enough.
Sorry.
All right. Administrative, Acting Mayor Johns. Seeing none. Parks, Recreation and Culture, Councillor Crone. Engineering and Public Works, Councillor Lahey. Fire and Emergency Services, Councillor Foster.
Not unless newly minted Chief Broussard has something, but I think we're probably good.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Ms. Berger has a new staff member that she would like to introduce us to.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and with the committee's indulgence, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our new Director of Planning Policy and Growth Management, Mr. Jack Krubnik. If it's the committee's pleasure, I'd like to invite Jack to maybe introduce himself and say a little bit about his background.
That'd be wonderful.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and to see all of you for the first time. Look forward to working with you all. I come to you from the last couple of years. I was at the town of Erin with the County of Wellington, and you know, there was a really passionate group of staff and members of council there, and it was a difficult departure for myself, and I see though that same passion kind of resides here in this council and in this community, and look forward to working with all of you. Prior to that, I've also spent 14 years with the City of Toronto, so hopefully I bring with me some experience and some insight, and I can help and work with each of you to bring your initiatives forward. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Krubnik, and welcome to the town.
Thank you.
Ms. Berger, did you have anything further that you wanted to bring up?
Nothing further this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll turn the chair back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roy-DiClemente. So that does takes us to adjournment, folks. Looking for a mover on that. Councillor Foster. All those in favor, be it resolved that we close at 3:23. All those in favor? All those opposed? Councillor Crone, you weren't opposed, were you? I'm just joking. Motion carries, folks. Okay, we'll see you shortly at our next meeting starting right after this.